I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector News Podcast. And I have joining me the President and CEO of BacTech Environmental, Ross Orr. Welcome back, Ross.
Thank you, Michael.
So after a long wait, we finally had some good news. But before we, I'll just tease that good news. But before we get into that, for those who aren't familiar with BacTech, let's give them the quick overview of what the company is.
Okay, we're a commercially proven mining technology that is being used, or we're planning to use in the environmental space related to mining. It's called bio-leaching, which basically our tagline is "Our bugs eat rocks," because that's what they're doing. They're replacing smelting and roasting with an environmental process that's contained in big stainless tanks. And over the course of 6 days, we liberate gold and silver from refractory sulfide mineralization. And if there's any arsenic present, which is the case in Ecuador, we produce a ferric arsenate, which is a benign byproduct.
Perfect. So speaking of Ecuador, governments move slow, and South American governments move even slower. After a long wait, you got actually surprisingly not one, but two pieces of fantastic news last weekend.
Yeah, well, as you know, back in August, the Constitutional Court in Ecuador put a temporary ban on the consultation process. There's probably 175 projects, not just mining, but all different sectors that were literally ground to a halt. This was brought on by the indigenous population, of which we have none in our area, but we kind of got swept up with everybody else. We were about a week away from holding the vote in the local community for approval for our project, and so the government just said keep going. And we did, and we got our 100% acceptance from the locals, eagerly accepting what we're doing. And then when they sort of struck down the ruling or lifted the ban, I guess is a better way to say, of the Constitutional Court, they immediately signed off, and I guess we're the first company out the door with the first project under this reopened scenario. So very happy, but lots of work to do now.
Yeah, sometimes good news brings more work down the road for getting things up and going. So it's very rare to get 100%, compliance within a community. But in your case, the benefits of this project to the community were so in favor of the community that it'd be very hard to find any opposition. Let's touch on those benefits to the community.
Well, as you know, we did that deal last year where we allowed the farmers to stay, or the workers on the farm that we bought to stay. I didn't need thousands of dead cocoa trees. And what we did was we said, look, we're only using 20% of the land initially with the first phase. Like 20 acres. So if you guys want to keep those trees alive and you want to pick the cocoa and sell it, you can keep the money. Simple as that. And then eventually when we do move into phase 2, which is literally quadrupling the size of the project, we will give you a job in-house. So that went over very well. Kate Castro, who's been our VP of Environment, has done an absolutely fantastic job of winning the confidence of the people, but not through games, through just reality, explaining what it is we're doing, why it won't affect them from an environmental perspective. In fact, it'll make it better. And you're going to make probably 10 times the amount of money that you're making now in working in the fields. So for them, it was a no-brainer. And for the miners who are getting less than 50 cents on the dollar for their gold from Chinese buyers, they can't wait for us to get this plant built, because we're gonna return them back to the 65 or 70 cents on the dollar they were getting before.
So win-win and big economic benefits to this entire region where you're going to be operating.
Absolutely. I mean, that little plant, Michael, is going to produce only about 30 to 31,000 ounces of gold, but it's highly profitable because we got a 12-year tax holiday from the government based on us going to phase 2, which, as I said, will probably quadruple the size of the plant. And then we'll be producing over 100,000 ounces of gold in the area, with margins that are somewhere between 20 and 25% after tax, which is pretty tough to beat.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you said you've got work ahead of you now, and as soon as that permit came across and the starter's pistol fired off, it said, go. Movement started to happen. You guys have applied for a green bond. Explain what the green bond is and what it means, and how come you qualify for it when a lot of other mining companies would not?
Well, we're not a mining company, for starters. Secondly, we're not creating a green bond. What we did was we went to Moody's and we said, here's our technology, here's our project. You tell us whether or not we qualify as an ESG investment. And they came back and they said 80% positive. The only negative was, of course, is that we use cyanide, although we do destroy it, but we do use cyanide to liberate the gold. And for that, there was a penalty. Now, if I'm watching the internet every day looking, there's a few companies out there that I think are working on alternatives to cyanide, which is going to be a huge win for the mining industry. And of course, that's something that we would use right away because it fits into our sort of our green initiative. So we've engaged a group called Analytica. It's a brokerage firm in Quito. We thought we'd raise the money right in the backyard. And they have been sort of reaching out to various ESG funds, mostly in Europe and locally in Ecuador. And we hope to place, roughly 20 million US in a 5 to 6 year term green bond. That's unfortunately going to pay a high interest rate. Unfortunate for us, not for them. But our cash flows are such that we literally could retire this, in 3 years plus. So, which is then we roll into the next round, which will be probably 60 to 70 million. And we'll do the same thing because the ESG market is looking for real ESG companies and not greenwashers. And we are not a greenwasher because we can identify everything that we add and subtract through the process. So, the fact that we're, that a restaurant chain decides to use, paper to wrap their burgers instead of styrofoam doesn't make you an ESG company.
No, it doesn't. But in the light of those restaurants, they seem to think that it does.
Well, they want to push the ESG message. And I think there's been a backlash recently in the last 6 months against a lot of ESG companies because they are greenwashing. They're just making up stuff to make it sound like they're, to keep people off their back, for lack of a better description. It's tough for a mining company to be an ESG company because you're digging a hole in the ground and you're using chemicals, and maybe we shouldn't go down this path.
No, but again, you're not a mining company, you're a tech company, and your tech is allowing these artisanal miners to be able to extract the gold from the rock in a more environmentally friendly way. And you are prepared to walk the walk as opposed to, I'm saying one thing and doing something different.
Right. And artisanal and small mines, all right? They're, some of these small mines in the area are up to 400 tons a day that they're processing. So, we're going to start off at 50 tons a day of concentrate, which will be fed by probably about 4 mines. And then the second phase, that's when we'll go downstream to the smaller producers and start processing their material as well. But there's about 250 tons a day that comes out of that area of concentrate.
So how long before the funding is likely to come from the green bonds?
Ooh, how long is a piece of string? It's hard to say. I'm targeting the first quarter of next year. Like I said, we have got our designation as being an ESG green bond, green social bond, actually. And I would think we'll probably start marketing it, now, I guess, really. But these debt deals take a lot longer than equity deals. Now, with that said, another thing that we just launched yesterday was a small private placement, because we haven't been able to raise any money for the past 4 months because everybody said, I am not getting involved in a situation where there's one permit outstanding. I've been in too many of those in the past, and I'm still waiting for the permit. So now that we did get the permit, we immediately filed to raise $1 million in a unit financing at 8 cents with a half award at 12 for 2 years. And, hopefully we'll close that in the next few weeks and start to place some deposits down on some longer lead time things like impellers and stainless steel, et cetera. So yeah, we're back grinding again. It's good. Feels good.
Wonderful. And once that green bond does get closed, what's the timeline to actually get you into production?
A year, 9 months to a year. It all depends on the deliverability of some of the major components. Like I said, stainless steel. Impellers are made in Vancouver, so depending on how busy they are, if we could get them in 6 months or we can get them in 9 months. That we don't know until we actually go back and sort of redo all the pricing that we did a year ago. And remember, all the pricing that we did a year ago, or a year and a half ago now, was during the supply chain issue. So the prices that we were quoting for stainless in our feasibility study were probably 50% higher than what they are now. So that 17 million capex could come in a little bit lower, but it may also be offset by the fact we've had inflation and other things over the past 18 months. So, but we're pretty confident the number is going to be in that ballpark.
Yeah, inflation's been kind of giving with one hand, taking away with the other in a lot of areas of, trying to get things up and running for people.
Yeah, exactly.
So if people want to participate in the green bonds or in the private placement, do they reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. How would they get a hold of you?
Well, you can email me at borr@bactechgreen.com, or you can call me, 416-813-0303. And I'll be happy to talk to you.
Perfect. I can't express how excited I am for you, and everyone's put in all this hard work to get the company to where it is now, and it's now finally looking like we can see the finish line.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'd like to shout out the fact that the people that work for us down in Ecuador as well as here in Canada, no one's been paid for several months, and yet nose to the grindstone. They believe, I believe. I mean, this project is going to happen. And as I like to say, it's sort of the first domino. Unfortunately, somebody glued it, but we're slowly whacking it away, and eventually it's going to fall over, and it's going to lead to, I think, a plethora of these projects, Peru, Mexico, Colombia, of course, the expansion in Ecuador. It's conceivable that we could produce 500,000 ounces of gold through this network of bio-leach facilities that we want to build over the next 5 or 7 years. Pretty exciting.
It is. The sky's the limit from what I can tell, and the opportunities once the first plant gets going. The question mark as to whether or not you can actually do this goes away pretty quick. So,
yeah, but don't forget, we have done it 3 times.
I know that, but until you have an actual plant, that's when it becomes until that point you still have people that will question it, right?
Oh yeah, people still call it new technology. It's been around for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to watching this all progress rapidly in the next year.
Anytime.
Okay, thanks, Ross.
Cheers.
BacTech Environmental is a paid sponsor of the Prospector News. The host owns shares, warrants, and royalties in BacTech, purchased at the market for investment purposes. The Prospector News podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.